Welcome into episode 13 of the Lucas and Lucas podcast. Lucas Frankel along me as always. I am Mike Lucas. It is December, Frankel. It feels like the longest year ever. We still have a month to go. 2021 offers no reprieve, but we had Wednesday night football for just the second time since 1963 this week. Do you know what the first Wednesday night game was of the last 50 years, Frank?
Well, before you get there, it was a Wednesday afternoon game. So let's get our facts straight before you start spitting incorrect information to the people.
Well, do you know when the first game in the NFL of the last 50 years played on a Wednesday was?
Yeah, 1944 Lions-Bears.
That's before what I'm talking about. In the last 50 years, who played on a Wednesday? Who played on a Wednesday, Frank?
Yes.
The Giants. Open up the 2012 season because it counteracted with the Democratic National Convention. Little trivia for you there, Frank. But I understand via your Twitter rant yesterday, if you haven't seen it, go check it out at Lucas Frankel on Twitter. You were not pleased that the Ravens-Steelers kickoff got put at 3:40 Eastern time because NBC was contractually obligated to air the Christmas tree lighting. We're both Jews here, Frank. So I know that struck a wrong chord with you.
No, it wasn't. I wasn't like mad about it. It was just appalled. I was more appalled because you know that the NFL is king. Everyone loves the NFL. You get the chance to watch the NFL, everyone's going to watch the NFL. The top rated shows every year, the top 5 are always NFL. It's all NFL games. And I had the tree lighting on yesterday. Oh, I didn't have it on, but it was on after the football game. And I was just like, get this off my TV now. So as soon as the football game was over, I shouted orders across the entire company. Take this off the television screens. This does not need to be on. We have way more important things than a tree lighting ceremony that I will never, ever care about for as long as I live.
Yeah, I mean, I've said on this before, but you hate joy and happiness. You hate puppies. You hate laughter. So something as simple as a tree lighting, I know, does not bode well with your emotional makeup. It brings joy and happiness to people, but it is dumb. I don't know why they couldn't supersede it. The NFL is king, as you said. It does draw the highest ratings, but I am curious to see with ratings down around all sports and all programs. It's not a sport. It's ratings are down across TV, across the board. I'm curious to see if the tree lighting brought in more ratings than a football game did.
No
I doubt it, but I would a 3:00 game versus a primetime tree. I think it might be closer than you think, Frank. I'm curious to see, as just a consumer of knowledge, if it was even remotely close. And if it was, then okay, maybe NBC made the right call. If not, what are you doing, NBC?
No, this was so the way this works is they had a commitment to do the tree lighting and they couldn't back out of it. And as a result, they had to make a concession and play the NFL. I'm sure if you spoke to, whoever the high honcho at NBC is, that they were not thrilled that they had to do that, but this is the reality of the world that they live in. And the NFL game will, if it doesn't quadruple the rating of the tree lighting.
I'm just curious. I don't really know. I'm just genuinely curious to see what the ratings for a tree lighting would be like, as opposed to a historic rivalry between two teams that, minus the COVID issues, would have been a really compelling game.
So yeah, I actually thought it was actually still pretty compelling. It ended up being a really, really close game, and Mike Tomlin destroyed his team after the game.
It was compelling in the fact that both teams stunk. It wasn't a good football game. It was only good because both teams were bad. And
it was also good because I did a teaser, Steelers -3 under 49.5.
Nice.
And that was very very pleased that hit. Because I said before the game it couldn't miss, and it did not miss, and I was very, 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 very happy that it came through for me. But so back to the game real quick. RG3, I was very, very curious to see. I thought he was actually going to be better. I thought he was going to play better than he played, just because he's been resting for like 6 years. Like, he's had all this time to gear up for a game, and he looked like absolute trash. I'd be shocked if he ever started another game in the rest of his career. This was his chance to possibly maybe get a starting job for next year, and
to make some money.
Completely ruined it. I mean, he looked good running it, and he had that long run, he had a long run, and then he had another run, and after that, he was gimpy with his hamstring. I feel like every other player in the NFL comes out of the game with that, but I guess he was on a mission and try to gut it out, and lasted another quarter, but that was sort of the nail in the coffin for him against the Steelers. And as a whole, they just didn't have. I mean, Des Bryant, he was over under for catches was 2.5. He didn't catch a single pass, and their offense was just so out of sync. I had the Steelers defense against Ben Roethlisberger. I was tied on my fantasy matchup going into the night, and I won because I had the Steelers defense and Roethlisberger. Very, very dramatic events.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Ravens' offense is broken right now, and it doesn't matter who's at quarterback, whether it's Lamar Jackson, IRG3, or Trace McSorley. It just frankly doesn't matter because they have no semblance of cohesion. What they did late in the first half to botch the clock management and not even come out with a field goal from there was ludicrous, and that's on coaching, and that's also credit to the Steelers for lying on the pile as long as possible to drain those valuable seconds. Which how that's not a penalty, I'm not sure, but that's
it should have been a penalty. They said it should have been a delay game penalty on the Steelers, but it was great gamesmanship, and they got away with it.
Exactly. So like credit to them, but you have to be better than that. And RG3, he had that 39-yard run, and for bits and pieces, he can be explosive. But if you have to count on him for more than 5-6 plays a game, you're going to be out of luck because he just isn't durable enough. And we've seen this time after time after time with him. He's just not durable enough to withstand the beating of multiple tackles in an NFL game. And his arm, he was so accurate back in Washington in those original, I think 2012 was his rookie year. I think he completed like 70% of his passes. And that may be a testament to Kyle Shanahan drawing up the perfect offensive scheme to get guys wide open for him. But it doesn't look like he's comfortable throwing the ball. His receivers aren't great. I mean, Hollywood Brown made that long touchdown to make the game close at the end, but that was an underthrown ball that he just was faster than the defensive back who made a ridiculously bad attempt to try and cut him off at the point. So, yeah, the Ravens offense is broken. They have massive issues moving forward. I know we're going to talk playoff teams in a sec, Frank, but the Ravens, I don't know how confident you are in them moving forward, but this offense is absolutely broken right now. Absolutely broken.
We talked about this. You made the point that you trust Lamar Jackson. You're a believer. And I told you all season long, he is not the quarterback. The quicker they decide to move off of him, the better they will be. And maybe over the offseason, they can execute a trade for, Deshaun Watson maybe.
Hey, I mean, I did say he was the James Harden of the NFL before anyone else. Oh. I said Lamar was. Oh. That was my initial point after like week 2. I mean, he is the reigning MVP. But this offense, and it's not all him. I mean, the offensive line's taking significant steps back. He hasn't been as good. The running game is not what it was last year, and that's ties into the offensive line. But I just think their schematic and their inability to get guys open, which they were fantastic at. I just don't know how you fall off a cliff that fast from having guys run wide open to having nobody open with the same coaches and virtually the same players. And it's back to the offensive line isn't giving him enough time. He hasn't been as accurate. And teams have figured out, hey, drop guys and make him beat you with your arm in certain parts of the field. He just can't do. But, yeah, I'm worried about the Ravens, Frank. And you want to talk playoff teams? You just want to get right to it?
Right to it. And then the last point. Well, I mean, Lamar Jackson's finish as a great NFL player. 2019 was his apex. He'll never be better than that. And what you're seeing from Lamar this year is what's going to be going forward here. He's not a guy that you can count on to lead your team to a title, and that will never happen for him. As sad a reality as that is, that's the reality of the situation for the Baltimore Ravens. As long as Lamar Jackson is under center for that team, and if you're dropping him for your fantasy team, all the power to you. I'd stay away. Playoff teams in the AFC. Here's what it's going to be. I'll line it for you right now. 1-2 will be Steelers, Chiefs in some order. I guess it's sort of trending that the Chiefs are probably going to leapfrog Pittsburgh, but we'll see how that plays out. Titans will win the AFC South. Bills will win the AFC East. Browns and Colts, I think, will both get in. And then the 7th spot will come down to a Week 16 matchup between the Raiders and Dolphins. Winner of that game is the 7th seed in the AFC.
Yeah, I have a hard time arguing with that. I think the Colts are still good enough to be in that conversation. I don't think they scare anybody, but they beat bad teams. I'm pulling up their schedule right now, Frank, and I apologize. You threw this topic on me last minute here, so I don't have my full research, but the Texans' final games are against the Raiders, against the Texans, the Raiders, the Texans, the Steelers, and the Jaguars. That's a very favorable schedule going down the stretch, especially if they can beat the Raiders and hold that tiebreaker over them. If it comes down to that, they should beat the Jaguars. I know they lost in week 1 to Jacksonville, but they should beat them again. And then they could split with the Texans for sure. And also week 16, the Steelers may have wrapped up that 1 seed already. They may not be playing for anything. So I would add the Colts in there as a team to watch just because the schedule is so favorable. Oh, you had the Colts in there?
Yeah.
Oh, then yeah, we're on the same page. We're on the same page.
And then the 7th spot comes down. The only question mark is the winner Vegas, Miami in week 16. The winner of that matchup will get the 7th seed.
Yeah, Miami's a game up on Vegas and Baltimore right now. Who does Baltimore end with?
They're out. Baltimore's not making the playoffs.
You have no faith in Baltimore.
You're out.
They have a very easy schedule down the stretch though, Frank. They play Dallas, Cleveland, Jacksonville, the Giants, and the Bengals. They could win 4 out of 5. They could win 4 out of 5 there and finish 10-6. You know what? Just to be different, I think Baltimore gets the seventh and final playoff spot. Just to be different.
Great.
Over in the NFC, who you got?
I mean, so the way it looks now is the way it's going to finish.
I agree.
Seahawks, Packers, Giants, Rams, Buccaneers, Cardinals. But all right, let's get to the good stuff. Giants.
Yes.
I mean, it's really hard to believe that we're in the spot that we are with the Giants. They're in first place. Daniel Jones is hurt. However, their upcoming schedule is a gauntlet, absolute gauntlet at the Seahawks, which they're going to lose, especially if they don't have Daniel Jones. I mean, they might lose by 30.
I hope they do not play Daniel Jones because that game's a lost cause to begin with. Let him heal up for those final 4 games and get him as healthy as humanly possible down the stretch.
Then after that, they have the Cardinals at home, which they may win, but I would take the Cardinals in that game. I think Kyler is going through a little bit of a lull right now, but I think he will bounce back. And I think by the time he gets to face the Giants, he will be a lot better than he was last week. Can
I chime in real quick on that? The Cardinals struggle against teams that can out-physical them up front. And the one thing that's been consistent with the Giants this entire season is their front 7 on defense. It is physical. Leonard Williams, thank you for the Jets for giving us to him for virtually a 3rd-round pick because he's been fantastic this season. Dexter Lawrence, Dalvin Tomlinson, B.J. Hill, these guys control the line of scrimmage. And Blake Martinez has been one of the most underrated free agent signings. He's in the top 5 in the league in tackles again. That front 7 can control the line of scrimmage. And when any team this season, has controlled the line of scrimmage against Arizona, they have struggled because they're such a finesse offense. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's a pencil-in win for the Giants, but that's a favorable matchup, in my opinion, for Big Blue in a game they probably need to win. Both teams need to win, but I actually like the matchup for the Giants in that one.
All right, so back Leonard Williams, you know he's in a contract here, right? You know he's going on a contract, and then he will never be this good again. This is the way Leonard Williams operates.
But he was in a contract year he was in a contract year last year, and they franchise tagged him. He was in a contract year with the Jets, and he was like, Adam Gase is the worst coach in the history of humankind. I refuse to play for him. He came to the Giants. He's now motivated in a new defensive scheme, invigorated by all these hard-nosed, blue-collar defensive players. And yeah, is it a contract year? He's showing out, but next year when he has his money, he's like, oh, I just don't care anymore. Is that what you're insinuating, Frank?
As soon as he gets his money, he will stop playing well. That's the way he operates. All right. And that's the end of the conversation on Leonard Williams. Don't thank me for that. He stinks. I'm happy he's not on the Jets anymore. He was a lost cause. Quentin Williams is much better. And we'll leave it at that with that. But all right. So after the Cardinals game lose to the Seahawks, lose to the Cardinals, home for the Browns, which they may win, and they have the at Ravens and the Cowboys. I mean, so they have 5 games left. At 1 or 2 wins at most. 1 or 2 wins at most.
Well, they're 4-7 now. 6-10 wins the division most likely because they have the tiebreaker over Washington. So they only really have to go 2-3. I think they're going to go 3-2. I think they're playing good enough. I think they're playing good enough football to win 3 of their final 5 games. They almost beat Tampa Bay. Their last 3 losses have been by a combined, I think, 13 points. They have been in games. Now, Seattle, that's a bad matchup. I do not see the Giants beating Seattle. I can see us beating Arizona. I can see us beating Dallas to end the season. I can see the Giants beating Baltimore. As you just said, you're not on the Lamar bandwagon whatsoever. And who's the 5th game? Who's the one I'm forgetting?
It is Seahawks, Cardinals.
And Cleveland. And Cleveland's they barely beat the Jaguars. Cleveland is not that good. I mean, they've beaten teams they're supposed to beat, but I don't think they've beaten any team they shouldn't have beat yet. If you can stop the run, you can beat Cleveland. The Giants are very good against the run. I mean, I'm not saying they should be favored, and I'm not saying they're going to win all 5 games here, or at least 4 or 5, but I don't look at any of those games outside of Seattle and say, crap, like this is going to be ugly. So maybe it's the optimist in me now because Joe Judge has me believing we are a division winning caliber team. and that's an optical illusion. I understand, because at best we're 7-9, but yeah, I think the Giants are playing really good football right now. And as long as Daniel Jones can come back within 2 weeks, I think they got a chance to go 3-2, Frank.
So are you excited? I mean, so the Giants.
I'm very excited now.
But what are you excited about? Because they're not winning a Super Bowl. I mean, if the Giants win the Super Bowl, then I don't know what I'm gonna do.
You have to get a tattoo you have to get a Giants tattoo if they win the Super Bowl.
All right, if the Giants win the Super Bowl, I will get a huge Giants tattoo on my back. Super Bowl champion.
Perfect. No, I'm excited because I think, and this is what I was excited about in the beginning of the season, then I lost that excitement midseason. When you have a new coach and you can see the culture changing, it's the same with the first year of Kyle Shanahan and Jimmy Garoppolo. They were 1-10. Garoppolo comes in, they win their last 5 games of the season. You can say, hey, they're building something. Did they screw themselves out of a top 3-4 pick? Yes, but you can see the foundation being built. And 2 years later, they were in the Super Bowl. I don't know if the Giants have the talent to make a Super Bowl jump in 2 years, but you can see the culture being changed in New York, and you can see the foundation being laid and built of a good franchise. And I want to say something that Jimbo always says. We talk to Jimbo every week. Jimbo says you have to learn to win, and you can't be a great program until your team learns how to win. And the Giants, despite not being that talented, are learning how to win. And I don't think that can be understated as you're trying to change the worst or the least winning franchise of the last 3 seasons into a team that, hey, they have a chance to win a freaking division title after being like 1-8 or 1-6 to start the year. It's absurd, Frank.
All right, he's talking about Jimbo Fisher, and in case anyone was wondering. And one more point about that. So I listened to Jamal Adams on the All Things Covered podcast and the CBS Sports Family podcast with Bryant McFadden and Patrick Peterson. They interviewed Jamal Adams, and he talked about how when he came to the Jets, like they didn't have anyone guiding them. And it was just it was Jamal Adams, hey, you're a rookie, you're the leader, like lead us. And I think that's probably one of the biggest issues with the Jets over the course of this past decade is that they do not know how to win, and they've never learned how to win. And they need there's got to be a culture shift with the Jets where someone somewhere can come in and lead the team, because I think that's probably just been as many issues as they have. That's probably, but whatever. You just made a good point that why the Jets probably have not been able to get out of this rut is because they don't know what they're doing. They're like a lost puppy in the middle of the woods.
Can I add one more point to this and just kind of elaborate on something Jimbo said? This past weekend, A&M beat LSU in an ugly game. It was 20-7. The offense looked like trash. And Jimbo said literally, he's like, that's not a game we won in the past. If our offense played that bad, there was no way our defense was going to make a stand and lead us to a victory over a talented LSU team. And that got into the conversation about learning how to win. And it doesn't happen overnight. It happens when guys go through tough defeats and they see what didn't work versus what did work. And I think that translates to all sports, but it is something with the Giants in particular, you can see almost on a weekly basis. Like they almost choked that game away against Cincinnati. They came very close to choking that game away, and they did just enough down the stretch, just enough to hold on to a win. And that's a building block that you can start looking and say, hey, this is what we did last time, we still won. How can we improve on that? We know this is not acceptable. How do we improve on that? And that's what gets me excited about the Giants, Frank.
The Bengals gift wrapped that game. That fumble. I mean, they were in position to kick a game-winning field goal.
I agree, but sometimes you need that luck and the bad break to learn valuable lessons. Like the Giants should have lost that game, but they didn't. That's a game in the last 3 years they have lost. And now because they're doing certain things different ways, and whether it's not they believe in Joe Judge more than they believed in Pat Shurmur, which I'm sure is true, they found the way to win, and you have to be able to do that when you're building the foundation of a successful franchise or a program, whatever level it is.
That's like I'm super excited about it. Went over Ryan Finley, but whatever. Congratulations,
Brandon Allen. And somehow that was the national TV game on Fox in Texas. I got to watch the whole thing. It made no sense. I don't know why. I mean, I know Houston and Dallas played on Thanksgiving, but I got to watch that game and it was hideous, but it was beautiful.
Congratulations. I'm very happy for you. Well, last point about the NFC. 2 more points about the NFC. One on Carson Wentz. A lot of talk about the Eagles going to Jalen Hurts. Listen, the Eagles need to be patient here. Carson Wentz is still one of the most talented players in the league. And if you look at year 4 for Peyton Manning, he went 6-10, 26 touchdowns, 23 interceptions. And after that was the worst year he had. That was 2000, I believe the year 2000 or 2001. And after that, he was just just lit it up the rest of his career. And year 4 for Eli Manning, I believe he led the league in interceptions. Like, they got to be more patient here. Jalen Hurts is not the long-term solution for the Eagles. You got to stick it out with Carson Wentz and not punt on him so fast. That is just impulsive thinking and irrational thought process all around.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not all on Wentz. The offensive line's been bad. The receivers aren't getting open. The running game stinks. But I think the one thing that's not being talked about enough with Wentz is outside of that 2017 season where he was an MVP candidate, he hasn't been all that great. And that one season catapulted him into this category of the elite quarterbacks that we look at. And I think we're evaluating him on a level of a Russell Wilson or an Aaron Rodgers or a Patrick Mahomes. And he's just simply not that. That 2017 Eagles team was so good that Nick Foles could step in at quarterback and still win a Super Bowl. So everything around him that year worked. And Frank Wright was his offensive coordinator and calling plays with Doug Peterson. And he's obviously an offensive genius. You see what he does in Indianapolis now. Doug Peterson hasn't been the same calling plays since Frank Wright has left. So I think it was a perfect mesh that brought the most out of Carson Wentz, and he actually overperformed that season as opposed to what he is as a quarterback for the majority of his career. I think when his career is over, we'll look back at that year as being the outlier more than we'll look at this year in the opposite regard, being so bad as the outlier. I think he outperformed himself in 2017 more than this is an underperformance from Carson Wentz.
We'll see. It's very curious. I mean, I guess there's a reason why he played in FCS school and didn't play at major Division I college football, and I guess we're sort of seeing that pan out.
I do agree though. Going to Jalen Hurts makes no sense now. Like, it makes no sense. I do agree with you on that.
All right, so best team in the NFC. Gun to your head, who wins the NFC right now?
I hate to say it, and I hate to admit when I'm wrong, but it's the Saints, Frank. It's the Saints.
No. You're wrong. All right, whatever.
You're going against the Saints now?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Who are you taking?
Who could represent the NFC in the Super Bowl? It's the Seahawks. It's a lock. Lock it in. I believe they're plus 350 or plus 400. It is the lock of the century. All right? Their defense is turning it around, and Russell Wilson just gets an ounce of help. That's all he needs, a little itty-bitty ounce of help, and it's over. Because past 3 games, opponents' points per game, down 10 points from 30 to 20. They're allowing over 130 fewer yards per game. And just in the past 3 games, they have 12 sacks. In the first 8 games, they had 19. It's over. The Seahawks are clicking at the right time. They're rounding into form. They're getting healthy. Chris Carson is back. Jamal Adams, they figured out, is the new Clay Matthews. And so instead of dropping him in a pass coverage, they got him as a linebacker, and it's working out for them. He can't guard anyone if his life depended on it, but he's great at figuring out how he can rush the passer unblocked. And Carlos Dunlap's making a huge difference for that team. DK Metcalf has emerged as probably if one of the top 3, if not the single best wide receiver in the entire league. They got Lockett on that offense. They're loaded in all facets, aside from Carlos Hyde, who they should never hand the ball off to ever again because it kills my fantasy team and it blew my week in fantasy. But overall, they're the most complete team. Taysom Hill, Drew Brees. When push comes to shove, do you really, really trust those guys to win on the very, very, very biggest stage? No, I don't. I trust Russell Wilson, and when I see that defense improving, it's over. It's locked. Lock it in. If you have the ability to bet on it, do it right now. Seahawks, because their odds are not going to be this low again.
It does pain me to say the Saints because I have been anti-Drew Brees the whole time. But Frank, I love how you bring up the defense. Do you know Seattle's point differential the last 3 games since their defense has turned it around?
I don't.
It's +6. They're 2-1 with a point differential of +6. So even with this catastrophic defensive turnaround, they are still barely beating teams. They're only 2-1 in those games. They lost to the Rams. They beat the Cardinals by a touchdown, and they barely beat the Eagles. Well, actually, the Eagles game wasn't nearly as close. It was a late 2-point conversion and touchdown that made that game remotely close, but they should have crushed the Eagles. I like the Seahawks. I think it's encouraging that their defense is finally coming on to be even a semblance of an NFL defense. But I like what the Saints have done without Drew Brees, who I don't know how many times I can say it. I still don't necessarily trust Drew Brees, but that defense is so darn good. And if they could win games with Taysom Hill, then Drew Brees is a massive upgrade over Taysom Hill. He really is.
You're wrong. Wrong again. Because last year they went 5-0 with Teddy Bridgewater.
I would say they're 7-0. They are 7-0 without Drew Brees the last 2 years, which is a scary thought and kind of backs my original point of Drew Brees just isn't all that good. But they've beat teams now with Taysom Hill, who's just not good. He's just not a good quarterback. I think that was Taysom Hill's a great change of pace guy. I think how he's used when Drew Brees is healthy is fantastic. But when he has to throw the ball more than 5 times a game, like, you're in serious trouble. And I just think the Saints are the most well-rounded team. They have the weapons, and I trust their offense more than I trust Seattle's defense. So I would put New Orleans over Seattle in that regard.
All right, well, when you see the Seahawks in the Super Bowl, then we can circle back to this conversation.
Did you put money on it?
Not yet. I don't have like so much money. I would love if I had like $1,000 in my account, I would 100% do it like tomorrow. But I'm very confident in Seattle.
Okay.
Extremely confident, and I would be shocked if they don't represent the NFC in the Super Bowl.
Okay, there you go.
The other team that I could sort of be a little bit worried about is Green Bay in terms of honestly the top 2 teams are Green Bay and I put Green Bay ahead of New Orleans too. I have no faith that New Orleans is going to go to the Super Bowl. 0.
Because you don't believe in Drew Brees, which is what I was saying all season. I just think right now
now that he's hurt, and I don't know what he's going to be when he comes back, and the whole overall uncertainty surrounding the offense right now is just makes me a little uneasy.
I do not feel supremely confident in any team in the NFC because I think the top 3 are all neck and neck. So
let's move on to college football here. Things are about to get very interesting in the college football playoff rankings.
Yes, sir.
So the 4 right now is Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, and Ohio State. 5 is Texas A&M, your team, and then 6 is Florida. And here are the potential hiccups that could really make things even crazier than they already are. So Notre Dame is going to play Clemson in the ACC title game. Clemson will probably win that game. I think they will win that game because I'll have Trevor Lawrence back. And I think if Trevor Lawrence played the first time, they win that game. But if Notre Dame manages to somehow win that game, then Clemson's out. If you cannot put a 2-loss Clemson team in over all these teams that are undefeated and have 1 loss. So if Notre Dame beats Clemson, Clemson is out. The other scenario is if Florida beats Alabama in the SEC title game, which I would also be shocked about, but is somewhat plausible that Alabama and Florida are both in, and that may then things get even crazier after that. And then
it's not somewhat plausible. It is what's going to happen. If Florida beats Alabama in the SEC championship, 2 SEC teams are in, and it's Alabama and Florida. No questions asked.
Right. And then the third thing is this whole Ohio State situation where they're probably not going to – I mean, it's sort of lining up that their game against Michigan next week is not going to happen, which means they would be ineligible for the Big Ten title game. But I do think the conference will adjust here. If Ohio State is undefeated, I think they're in no matter what. They're not going to leave out an undefeated Ohio State team. That's just not going to happen under any scenario in the history of mankind. So here's what potentially could happen. Texas A&M, your team. So here's what they need to happen.
The team I cover. Just put out the team I cover. I'm not necessarily an Aggie fan. It's just the team I cover.
So what you need is Notre Dame to beat Clemson again, and you need some magic to happen here with Ohio State, where the committee just loses favor with them. And then,
you need one of the two. You don't need both. One or the other.
So what's the feeling like right now in Aggieland about the prospects of them making the Final Four?
Well, first off, people down here are more worried about winning out because more than anything else, A&M needs to win out here. If they lose a game, it's out.
You're acting like they don't. I mean, Auburn. So the Auburn spread was interesting. They're at Auburn this week. It was less than a touchdown. Auburn stinks. I mean, Bo Nix is trash.
Auburn has had A&M's number since Jimbo's got here, though.
But the tides have turned. LSU owned Texas A&M.
I agree. I'm just telling you that the Auburn game on the road, that has not been a friendly place to A&M. So that's a little cause for concern. The next 2 games they should win. A&M fans are looking at it like this, though. Win out, and you're rooting for Notre Dame. That's all. If Clemson loses again, A&M's in, assuming A&M wins out, and assuming Alabama beats Florida in the SEC championship. So right now, A&M are big Notre Dame fans, and they just need A&M to win out. Now, assuming Clemson beats Notre Dame, and the Ohio State thing comes into play. Now that's where it gets interesting because I think rational Aggie fans look at the 2 teams side by side and say, yeah, Ohio State's probably a better football team. But they also say, well, we played 10 SEC games. You guys played 5 games. The SEC is better than the Big Ten. That's not fair to us. And that's where it's going to come down to the eye test and the eyeball, for lack of a better word, decision by the committee. And A&M has had 2 games where they've looked fantastic in that regard, and they've had 2 wins that they have looked absolutely putrid in that regard. I mean, the LSU win was convincing. It was not aesthetically pleasing. What?
It wasn't convincing. They barely won.
They were up 20-0 with 10 seconds left, and LSU scored a garbage time touchdown.
Like,
I mean, they're up.
Not convincing in the sense like, wow, Texas A&M looked unbelievable.
It was an ugly win, but it was a convincing. I mean, they were up 20-0 till the final minute of the game. So it was ugly but convincing. The Vanderbilt win was not convincing, and it was ugly, and that's two of their 5 wins right now. So A&M needs to not only play well down the stretch, but play well and win big. And I think style points will make a difference in the final 3 games, which Ohio State, they may not play more than 1 game for the rest of the season. And then it comes down to 10 games versus 5. And what the hell is the committee going to do? I have no idea. But Aggie fans are rooting for Notre Dame.
So whenever the selection's done, whenever the time comes that they do release the Final Four, I will know exactly who the 4 teams are, because every year I get it right, and the committee and I are lockstep this every year. So on that Saturday night, I will tweet out who the 4 will be, and that's what it'll be on that Sunday morning when they release it. And I have the utmost confidence that I will be 100% right on that, because I always am.
They have the notifications turned on for you. So when you tweet, they're like, we just got to wait for Frankel's tweet. And as soon as we see that, then we could release ours, because we don't want to make him, look bad for waiting for after the fact. We want to give him the first shine.
These things always work themselves out, and it's always very simple and very clear cut. And there shouldn't be any controversy when all is said and done. Right now, there's a lot of things up in the air, if this, if that, but when everything plays itself out and, Texas A&M loses to Auburn and that handles that, and Ohio State plays their Big Ten championship game, they win that, and Clemson beats Notre Dame, and both those teams are in, and everything will just align the way it should, and that's usually the way these things work. Last things for the NBA, Russell Westbrook traded for John Wall. I mean, talk about a meaningless trade. I mean, none of those teams are winning a title. I guess the Wizards are a little more interesting with Westbrook and Beal, but 2 guys making over $40 million in Westbrook and Wall, just 2 guys that just aren't winning players. I just thought it was like, oh, this happened. We have to talk about it, but it's really one of those trades where it doesn't really change the great landscape of the NBA.
In the rundown, you texted us for topics. You said John Wall for Westbrook. Who cares? And that's honestly my thought. Like who really cares? I think the one thing I do enjoy most about this trade is Harden wanted Chris Paul. They didn't want Chris Paul. He wanted Westbrook. They didn't want Westbrook. He wanted John Wall. And who's the best point guard out of those 3?
Sorry, Chris Westbrook, Paul, and
John Wall. It's Chris Paul. And it's not close. So he has gone through 3 all-star $40 million point guards in the last 3 seasons, and his original Boo Crush, which is now so far gone that Paul's been on 3 different teams, was his best option to win a title. So, yeah, not ideal for the Houston Rockets and James Harden, who will not be a Brooklyn Net, unfortunately.
So in your mind, that this means that it's not happening.
Yeah. You
said unfortunately, so you're disappointed that it's not going to happen.
I'm disappointed that we couldn't have traded Kyrie for James Harden.
Oh, that was never going to happen. Get over yourself.
Well, that's what I was hoping for. Speaking of the Nets, by the way, Frank, primetime games galore in the upcoming season. About damn time is all I have to say. As someone who lives outside the tri-state area now and does not get the Yes Network, I cannot wait to finally watch my Nets on national television. I cannot wait for those powder blue city uniforms to come out. Though they're going to look so good on TV. Kevin Durant, Splash Mountain, is going to be an absolute god among men this season, as long as he's healthy. Who knows if he's healthy? Kyrie Irving, do whatever you want. Just get out of KD's way and let Kevin Durant cook. That's it.
So here's how the first game is going to pan out.
That's
the Warriors will be up 120 to 118 with 5 seconds left. The Nets will have the ball. They'll inbound to Kyrie. He'll dribble, fade away 3 at the buzzer, miss. And then Kyrie will get destroyed, and that will send this Nets season spiraling out of control. And again,
so you give it one game before this season gets out of control. 1 game.
After that first game, you're going to start seeing the buildup of the frustration. Whose team is it?
It's KD's team. It is KD's team. It is not a question to anyone but Kyrie. Kyrie is the only person in the entire planet Earth who does not understand that it is KD's team.
The chemistry's not working. Did Kevin Durant make a mistake coming to the Nets? Kyrie Irving is just the biggest cancer in the end. I mean, these are the things that are going to be discussed. And the fact they're being thrust into the spotlight just makes the microscope on them even that much bigger. And I'm still not looking forward to it, even though the first 2 games are on Christmas. They got Christmas. They're just primetime galore. And it's just I almost rather just it would fly under the radar and keep quiet. But
no, I will not be able to go home on Christmas. So that'll give me something to watch at least.
Last thing before we go, the Mets signed. Well, by the way, Daniel Jones, they just tweeted a video, is practicing today, and actually looks somewhat like he has at least a remote chance of playing.
Do not play this week. Sit out. We're gonna lose this game anyway. Come back healthy next week.
And the Mets made one signing the other day. They signed Trevor May, a relief pitcher from the Twins. And if you didn't know any better, you think they would have signed just Cy Young out of retirement or something like that. Because the Mets fans seem to be losing their minds over this guy, who I've never heard of. But
you never heard of him? Wait, you gave me all that crap last night for not knowing who he was, and you never heard of him either?
I knew the name, but I wasn't familiar with him. But either way, the Mets fans were like, "Oh my God, we got Trevor May!" And there was so many articles written about this guy and his elite fastball and his breaking ball. Like, what are we talking about? Trevor May stinks. He's not going to make a difference for the Mets. Make a real signing, then we'll talk. I know Steve Cohen's probably going to end up buying Springer and Ozuna and Trevor Bauer, but get over yourself with Trevor May. Give me a break.
Trevor May sits down when he pees. That's all I have to say. That's my hot take about Trevor May. I have no idea who he is, but he sits down when he pees, and he probably likes Skyline chili.
All right, that'll do it for episode 13 of the Lucas podcast. You know where to find me at Lucas Frankel. Seahawks going to win the NFC. See you guys next week.
Later.